All right, BJ, thanks for jumping on with me, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. You are founder, CEO, Synthesis Multimedia Productions, DMVstream.com. You've been in the streaming game for a long time. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I know I kind of hit on the highlights, but tell us what's going on.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, the streaming game has evolved, and it's been quite a journey. Um, Starting out as a sports reporter and kind of chasing sports as they evolve, and the expectations of how people get their media. So it's we're in started the business in 2007. So this is year 13, and I've been doing the streaming aspect of the video production for close to, I'd say, 9 years now. And things have certainly changed, and you know, our growth throughout those changes um, is something I'm really proud of.
So how did Synthesis kind of come to be? So you were with the Washington Post, right?
Right?
And had kind of been doing some video work there and saw an opportunity.
Exactly. I was a sports reporter doing local sports, and I kind of made it to the Post right as newspapers started to sort of shrink, right, in size and space. Particularly the sports page is sometimes one of the first things to take the hit. Uh, in terms of competing for space in a newspaper where you've got 4 or 5 prominent pro teams for things like high schools and local colleges and youth athletics. The the writing's on the wall there in terms of how things were starting to evolve and change. And I started bringing I bought a $50 camera off Craigslist, and I started. That's when Craigslist was the place to buy things. By the way, that's how old this business is. Um, and I started taking it with me to the local games that I was doing, and doing highlights and interviews, and hustling and posting those videos within 2 to 3 hours of the completion of the game itself. And I know that that's something that is like expected now from every game, but now, back then, that was like a novel concept. And I'd be at high school games, and the other coaches would think I was like a scout stealing plays for the other team, and they couldn't understand. I'd say I with the Post, and they'd say, I don't understand. The Post is a newspaper. What do you mean you have a video camera? So, I started doing that and just kind of building the idea, and the Post saw an opportunity there, and I got a really great opportunity to step away from the newspaper, but in the same day come back as a vendor, a contractor, and such was launched, my first successful contract. And ever since then, I've just been building on that, and up to a place now where we've got 26 HD camera kits, and a truck, and for video production, and flight packs. And it's just been one thing after the other, and really just been chasing the opportunity as it has evolved, and building towards that every time.
So streaming wasn't originally part of your kind of repertoire. Was it just mainly kind of like you said, you were shooting some video at the games, grabbing the interviews, post game stuff like that, and then streaming came later?
Yeah, so I would streaming wasn't even part of the plan at first. It was just like I saw an opportunity to just kind of stay employed. I didn't have this big vision like sometimes people want to convince you they had when they can do their Monday morning quarterback and looking back. I wasn't thinking in those terms at first. It was just like I needed to secure some kind of like job, and make sure that I had a job in this business where I was watching my friends like get picked off one by one, and across all sports media, not just at the place I was. And it just happened. And then ever since then, I was just chasing like what was next. And I think as what I was doing became easy for everybody to do. Anybody could go out to a game and shoot it and edit it now. And I was always looking for, like, what is it that sets myself and then now this company apart? And I really saw streaming as the next thing. I would say that was a vision at that point. That was a cold, hard gamble. And, you know, we started going out to, you know, as we built these relationships with coaches now who knew who we were, I would then offer the next step. Hey, coach, can we just come out and stream your game? And the first game we ever streamed live was at St. Stephen's, St. Agnes boys lacrosse. I was out in the middle of a turf field with a laptop and a couple of cameras trying to make it work. And, you know, we failed miserably. But every time we failed, we learned a lesson. And I think our success now is built on each of those failures, because it's like plugging your your finger in the hole in the dam, right? Like, and that's the way I look at it. You know, like, we realized you can't do this on Wi-Fi or a jetpack in the middle of a football field. Gotta have a hardline Ethernet connection. Okay, now how do we get that Ethernet connection from the school to the field? So all of these failures along the way are what have gotten us to having this really cool production truck that we roll out now, and is just chock full of toys and gadgets that get the job done.
That's a great point. You have to almost become, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but like, you have to kind of become okay with failing along the way, right?
Especially in this business. And, you know, that people advertise equipment, they advertise apps and all of these things. And particularly in this business, you have to make sure that what's being advertised is accurate, but also works for what you're trying to do. I get phone calls from people all the time, you know, whether it's churches that are trying to stream their services, especially now during the pandemic. And I was on yesterday with a really big local, I would call it a gym, but it's more like an athletic complex. And they're trying to stream multiple fields of games and things, and I'm trying to do it with equipment that isn't necessarily like made for that. And I'm trying to talk them into other things. And it's just because my experience tells me, you know, cheap isn't always the best, because you're going to end up, you know, like spending a lot more to fix that mistake. But anyway, but you mentioned, you know, this business and what it's about in terms of those failures. And those are the things I've learned along the way is, all right, I got this piece of equipment or this app or this software. It might work for something. It's not working for this. Or, man, I could use this for something else. Mm-hmm. And I think that those, I like to call them, you know, failures, are all part of getting to a better place. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And so, full disclosure, I've freelanced, done work for BJ over the last, I think since 2012, you know, more so back then. Now it seems like maybe like a once a year basis. But so I was.
You have kids, Jeff. You know what I'm saying? Like
they take up a lot of time. You know. So I was, you know, you talked about your early streams, and so I was there for, you know, I think I started in 2012, and I did a basketball game for you. That was my first production, and I think you had a laptop kind of sitting at mid-court, and I was on one cam, maybe, I think I was kind of the close-up cam on the court, and then there was another guy up high, getting the full court angle. So yeah, you've certainly come a long way. So talk just a little.
Hold on, let me give you some love, because then you, within like a few months, you were able to lead one of our crews on a broadcast at a lacrosse game. I just threw like a ton of equipment at you. I was like, hey man, I got to go out of town. I have no choice. It was like a family matter. And I was like, man, I think you could do this. Here's a TriCaster, here's cameras, here's cable, here's no internet connection, and I gotta go. And you totally nailed it, and I'll never forget that. That was pretty impressive for you to essentially come in and just like with the equivalent of like learning a new language in one day and being able to speak it. It was really awesome to see. So I give you some kudos on that, man. That was pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, especially coming from you, BJ. And that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because you give that opportunity for a lot of college students, people that are just kind of getting started in the business, right? I mean, your productions, I know now, have grown, and you have quite a good sized crew. So you create like internship opportunities and part-time job opportunities for all kinds of, like I said, college students, I think, and just people kind of trying to just get their foot in the door, right?
This business is like a weird bird, is what I like to tell people. Like, you've got people coming in like all different sides, right? Like, you've got your traditional college student that wants to like be in broadcast journalism, and they've done the schooling, and maybe they've done an internship, and they want to learn and be around the business. And then you've got like traditionally what are called like retreads. I don't really like that word, but like maybe people that are finding their passion later in life, or maybe like out of college they were a broadcast journalism major or not, or whatever, but like they took the money job instead of the passion job, and they really want to get back into it. And then, you've got all these other people in the middle. You've got professionals that have been doing it for 30 years that want to moonlight and call games on the air. You've got guys that were part of a TV industry that were freelancers, that when that business was hardcore rolling, they were like, even though they were freelance, they were like making really good full-time money. And it runs the gamut, but really our structure as a company is based on finding a project and then finding the best people to put on it and pulling those people together to collaborate. And some of the opportunities we offer put people out in the field. We give them the equipment and an opportunity to go out, learn, shoot, edit, get paid, and then also turn that around to a client that they may not necessarily be able to get on their own. For example, the Post. We've got people that come in and they work with us, and they get bylines there, and then also we have a studio where they'll go and cut shows and be on air and learn that side of the business as well. And then when we're doing an actual event or a game, we've got, sometimes we're hiring up to 20 people for a day, whether it's directors, camera operators, graphics, instant replay, on-air talent like play-by-play color, sideline reporters, utility players, audio people. So it runs the gamut. We have an event coming up, actually, which is great to be able to say here, because I haven't said that in a while. But we're going to be doing a college basketball bubble in the Washington, D.C. Convention Center, and producing that for ESPN 3. 4 college basketball teams coming in for a 3-day period over Thanksgiving. And, we'll have a crew of about 13 people, each doing those roles as we're producing these games. And like you said, creates those opportunities for those folks. So it's just exciting to be able to have something to get back to now, and pull these people together and really just see everybody again, and that's pretty cool. We're excited about that part too, not just the work part.
Yeah. So kind of building on that, and I was going to ask before, just kind of jumping into all the opportunities that come with your company, for those wanting to get in the business. So, clearly your productions have evolved quite a bit over time. We were just talking about a laptop and 2 cameras,
right?
And now you're talking about trucks and ESPN 3. So how, and I know you could spend probably hours on this question, but talk a little bit about how your productions have evolved over time, whether that's just, you know, the equipment you have brought on that's been kind of key to being able to up the game, and then kind of what's that meant for the clients that you're able to bring on. Because I know, like you just mentioned ESPN3. I know, you're in the college sports game. So how have your productions evolved over time, and then kind of, how has that, or what has that meant for clients that you've been able to bring on?
So in the beginning, there were no clients. In the beginning, it was just like I was doing this streaming because I thought it was going to be next. And that was tough. You got to dip into your own pocket and fund it and make it work and find the equipment, because it's like you got to have the stuff and be ready for when the client does come knocking. And I very much understood that. And so, we went from this exploration through laptops and all this stuff. And, as we started to kind of knock on the door and clients started to realize that streaming was important, we really just started to chase whatever the expectation was. And, if the expectation was having 4 camera angles and instant replay, then, you need the equipment for that. And now, as we have continued to push forward, and we do have the clients and we've got the funding, it's always trying to stay ahead. And, for example, this upcoming set of broadcasts, the expectation is, 4 cameras, 4 angles of instant replay, a live graphics package. Obviously you've got your on-air talent, all of those things. And all of those things don't sound terribly challenging in terms of when you look at a broadcast, but to produce it on the other end, the amount of equipment that's needed, and to be able to actually hit stream when the game starts successfully has taken weeks of pre-planning and walkthroughs and work. And but yeah, I mean, I think as we've grown, we've been able to target a new level of client every time. And a lot of times, I think now, since we've been in the game so long, our name is synonymous, I think, with sports live streaming in the area. And so anytime a group comes in this area to do an event, we usually get a phone call. And that means a lot, in terms of our progress, and whether it works out or not with that client, what the expectations are, or the budget is, or, what our availability is. It's nice to be on par with, the rest of the companies that have been around or were around even before we got started.
Now, as far as equipment, what was over time? You mentioned you're dipping into your own pocket a lot of times as you're growing, and I remember you I consulted you. I was just kind of thinking about getting a new Mac laptop, and I was like, I think I knew you had used Craigslist, like you mentioned, to get your cameras and stuff like that. So I saw this person was selling a new Mac fully stocked with all these Adobe programs on it, and I said, I know you do this a lot. Any tips? And you're like, yeah, okay, meet the person at a public place, take them to the Apple store, make sure that it's legit. So what? You did a lot of that early on, right? I mean, you were getting your cameras off Craigslist. Wasn't it your first TriCaster? You had I don't know if it was used or something like that, but talk a little bit about how you were kind of able to get kind of make it work.
So yeah, in the beginning, you don't have, I mean, at least what I was doing and dipping into my own pocket, like, you want to make a jump, you want to make an investment, but you can't break the bank. And so a lot of times you were buying used. And I'll tell you a funny story, and this is what kind of convinced me to, as we started to grow the company, to kind of take a different route. But so I used to buy these cameras off Craigslist. Anytime I saw one, I would buy it. It was called a Canon GL2, and it was a DV tape camera. and I had like 10 of them, and we would use them for live streaming, but also for recording games. And all of my producers out in the field had them, and it was playoff football. It was November, and all my guys and girls were out in the field. I think I had like eight people out that night. This was high school playoff football, and the temperature dropped to like negative whatever. I don't know. It was freezing, and all the cameras just quit. They just like froze because it was so cold. I didn't even know they could do that. They like their whatever brain is in this camera just froze, and everybody called me. They all got home. Nobody even knew. And they were like, one by one, I was getting a phone call over, like, you know, as people got home to review their tape, that there was no tape. And so anyway, it forced me to go a different route. That weekend, I bought like $12,000 worth of brand new digital HD cameras, no tape, everything shooting to SD card. But those are the lessons you learn as you do this. But to speak back to your point about equipment, in terms of our live stream production, we are on TriCasters. You know, for what we do, that's unbeatable, and we need that. So I have a small video production van. It's a Ford Transit Connect, and it's completely decked out. Inside of that van, it's two TriCaster 460s. One is the main program, pulls the 4 cameras. The other TriCaster is a instant replay feed, and that pulls the same 4 cameras. And each you know, director works on the main one, and replay guy works on the replay one. And then I've got a third TriCaster 40, which is a backup that just takes the feed and records it as a backup unit. And that's been a successful setup for us. And then, you know, within that truck, you know, you've got laptops that all network across for overlays like Scorebugs and Live Clock and things like that. But it's I finally built the truck and a trailer out because I was tired of pulling plastic bins to facilities and setting up essentially a control room every time, and it's been really good.
I have it listed here as a question. How clutch has it been to have the truck?
I mean, so originally, like I said, I bought a trailer years ago, and I was just hauling the plastic bins with TriCasters and cabling and everything. And every time we got somewhere, we would have to take it all out, set it up, and then like with that, you run into problems because you're kind of setting it up every time, and so like something is going to get missed, something is going to be placed wrong, a connection is going to be off. And it was hard, you know. So then I ended up building out the trailer into a video production unit, and that was good for a while. But it just got to a point where it was just too big, and I needed to be at every production because I was the one hauling the trailer. And I wanted to scale, and I wanted to get to a place where, you know, my guys could just come pick up the truck and go. And so built out a smaller Ford Transit Connect van, and that has just been great. I think the first 2 go-arounds with the bins and then the trailer, I kind of learned what to do, but also more so what not to do. And this van is, I think, built more properly to mitigate problems and to, you know, do things like much longer cable runs, so you're not losing signal quality, and ins and out connections that actually work. You know, so you're not, you know, chasing why this camera doesn't work or why this cable doesn't work. And those are all the things that cost time and stress on a production. So to answer your question, the van has just been such a welcome change. You know, and I've had it for about, I don't know, going on a 3rd year now, and the quality product that it puts out, I would put that on par with some semi trucks that some of these bigger networks are rolling in. I mean, we can do just what they do, you know, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and maybe once this publishes, I'll have to get some pictures that of that, because it is, I think, for folks to see. I have seen the pictures you post online, and it's impressive. So bravo on making that progress. And I know you mentioned the time it saves, and there were, I remember in some of my earlier productions with you, you were very particular about, like, leave this piece on the tripod when you put it away, or make sure this piece is back on the tripod, but all those little things, if they're wrong, they dip into the efficiency of everything, and it's important.
It's amazing how a little converter or a little piece can just tank your whole production. And when you're working with crews and people, and you can't be everywhere, you can't see everything, you can't touch every piece of equipment. You've got to be very specific, and because when you get to the next production, if dude left the tripod plate on the camera, which is now back at the office, we don't have a tripod plate, you know what I mean, and we don't have a game cam, and it's little things like that, but you've got to be that way. And
yeah,
I'm even more neurotic now, Jeff, than I used to.
Believe it or not.
A lot more on the line now with client expectations. And
yeah.
Talk to some of my guys; they're probably sick and tired of hearing, "Hey, make sure every cable has a cable tie." But that's such as life.
Yes, it is. It's necessary, I'm sure. So just last couple things here, and I want to make sure we get to this, because as we're recording this, we are in month 8 of a pandemic. And I know COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on sports in general, sports production business, I'm sure. So talk a little bit about when mid-March rolled around, and you kind of started to see that things were getting canceled, and as the months went on, what did that look like for your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's not been pretty, and I think that one of the things that has been more challenging, I think, is you talk about earlier in this conversation, creating opportunities for others. And as a small business owner, that's really what you are. You're a go-between between the client and whomever works for you. And a lot of times a failure of mine is a failure for many. And you feel that way as a small business owner, that you're letting people down. And I think that was mentally the most challenging thing for me. The work is going to come back. I haven't panicked. I'm not going to. And that's what I tell my wife, when she sees me fishing 7 days a week and is asking me what I'm going to do. I'm like, listen, if you're doing it right, you got to prepare for a rainy day as a small business owner. And this has been a lot longer than that. But you stay positive, and you try to lift other people up, and just wait for it to pass. I think, I haven't tried to reinvent anything during this time, which is usually unlike me, in the sense that I try to always, like, stay ahead and what's next and all of that. I think, I've just kind of looked at this period as, hey, you're not going to get many opportunities in life where you're going to have basically a year to just, like, be a family person only, and go fishing 7 days a week, and do projects around the house, and so I've tried to really just think in those terms, like see this as an opportunity rather than this 2020, like everybody likes to say. And it's not been great, again, and it's not always positive, and but that's the way. I think perspective is everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come back. It's starting to already. We worked for our first time as a company this past weekend. Shocking to tell you that the first sports event we did back during a pandemic was a wrestling event. I can't. What can I tell you? But you know, and then we've got some college hoops coming up. So you know, and it's. I think as we get into 2021 in the new year, I think you know we're already starting to see that sports are coming back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And do you think that you know, so I'm seeing, I'll obviously I'm a sports guy and watch my fair share of ESPN and Fox NFL Sundays, all that good stuff, and it's interesting the way these guys have kind of, you know, I mean, they're innovators anyway, but you know, through COVID-19, I've been super impressed with some of this, just the way that you can make a virtual interview look. You know, you've got ESPN bringing these, you know, doing these interviews virtually, but they're still using their cameras in a way that makes it look so professional and polished. You know, do you think that COVID, you know, may have a sort of a lasting impact on the business? Because I would imagine, you know, these businesses, now unfortunately it may mean bad things for people's jobs, you know, I'm not sure, but you know, I would imagine that doing those kinds of interviews are incredibly cost saving as opposed to sending crews out to do them. So things like that, I mean, do you think it's going to have kind of a lasting impact?
Absolutely. And you know, necessity, you know, drives innovation. And you know, I'll give you an example of how the business is already changing during this time, and how it could stay that way. I was watching a high school basketball game on ESPN the other day. It was Oak Hill Academy, and I was interested because, see, when a lot of people watch sports, they're looking at the sport. When I watch sports, I'm looking at how did they make this broadcast, and so I'm looking on the sidelines for camera people. I'm looking at positions, slash cams, where did they put audio, and how are they feeding certain things. And the cool thing about this game that they did at Oak Hill was, as I was looking on the sidelines, there was no camera operator, and underneath the basket were these RoboCams that you could see moving with the action. And likely the reason they did that was because they didn't want to have their camera people in the building because of COVID restrictions. There was a small crowd, I guess you would call it, and I guess they just didn't want to risk their people. So they had these moving cameras that is just a guy in the truck on a joystick, you know, like those old Atari joysticks. That's what it looks like. And I was watching how this production looked, and it looked just as good as anything else. And you know, I don't even know if the talent was on site in the building. And it's called at-home production now, and this is a lot of what we're seeing. And so with the evolution of the internet and high-speed data transfers and things like that, now this at-home production is really what they're doing. Instead of sending trucks out, they're sending camera people out with one camera and encoders, and they're sending, let's say at a stadium, they send 10 camera people there with 10 cameras. They send those feeds back to Bristol in Connecticut, to the ESPN campus, where they're pulling in those feeds into a control room, and they're switching their show right from there. Excuse me. Carl Ravitch did Sunday Night Baseball from a studio in Bristol, Connecticut. He was calling the games from these at-home productions. And you know, what does that do right now for COVID? It's safe, but what does that do for future looks when the big boys holding the purse strings say, well, you don't need to be at the game to call it, and we don't need to send a truck, and we don't need a 30-person crew, and we can still get the same result. I do see that's going to impact the business moving forward, and I don't know if it's a good thing. I don't know. Obviously, for jobs and things like that, it's probably not good. But innovation-wise, I find it interesting. But it will certainly, I believe COVID will have a lasting impact on how we do business and how we approach sports broadcasting in particular.
Yeah, I think I saw the Washington football team, I think for away games, their radio crew calls the game from FedEx.
Right.
So yeah, you seeing stuff like that all over, and like you said, it has been, I've been impressed, and especially I think stuff like the NBA bubble, just how well that was done. In my opinion, in this environment, I think it's all been pretty amazing. The innovation that's kind of come with it
Was amazing. The NBA, I think, is should be the blueprint for every major sports league. They're forward thinking from all aspects. It's been amazing to watch them lead the way, and unfortunately, not all leagues have followed their lead. And you're seeing the results of that. But I mean, they didn't have one positive test in the bubble. That's remarkable. And they crowned a champion, and it was just I enjoyed the productions themselves too, and but yeah, I agree that was a success in this era.
Yeah, and I won't take up too much more of your time, BJ. Just one last thing here, and again, I know this is kind of this might be a question that could also be done in a separate podcast, but just so if somebody is thinking of going into business for themselves in the production industry, or they're looking at doing some just kind of going into the freelance world, any tips, guidance, or just sort of what's sort of something that's stuck with you along the way to kind of keep you going and having some success?
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be to go back to school and become a lawyer.
Wait, first, I know you do a lot of talks for, or you used to go to your alma mater, right, and do talks for
Right.
your journalism classes, and what you used to tell them, at least, you're not going to get rich in this business, or I don't think you started by telling them to go elsewhere, but
Right. A lot of times I scare them off, and a lot of times when folks come to me for an opportunity, I do try to scare them off first, and if they keep coming back, then I know that they really got what it takes, because it's hard. This is a really hard business to make it in, to survive in, and to stay in once you're in. And it's not like you can ever get comfortable. I think that I like that, but I think sometimes it's like, gosh, I need to take a breath. And maybe that's what this sort of COVID break has been, and that's maybe been good. But advice wise, I would just say, be humble, be willing to learn. I think every industry is like this, but maybe ours even more. Reputation is everything, absolutely everything. I've given up a lot to keep a good reputation, and that's so important to me, and so that's what I like to tell a lot of the young bucks coming up. It's just be good to everyone, be kind, be humble, and the days of the divas in this business are gone, and just work hard and be willing to take whatever opportunity is given to you, because if you are blinders on, I only want to be on the air, I only want to call the Redskins games, it's just, that's not the way this business works. You may be a graphics guy or a camera guy for a few years before you can move in to that other side. So I think that's the advice I like to give, is just be open-minded, and be willing to work hard, and be willing to take whatever opportunity is given and make the best out of it.
Awesome. Well, and lastly, where can people find you, learn more about the company?
Yeah, dmvstream.com is a really good place to check out. Got a lot of ways to get in touch there, a lot of examples of our work, and all kinds of fun, good stuff. So yeah, it's a great place to start.
All right, BJ, I don't want to keep you from your daily fishing adventure. Is that where you're going after this?
Probably, yeah. I got digital learners in my house that I need to work with first, but usually I tell my wife around 3 o'clock I got to go to the store, and I end up at a pond locally somehow. Bass. So stay tuned on my Facebook. You'll see a big chunky bass today. Anyway, Jeff, thanks for having me on. This has been really cool. Kudos to you and everything you're doing, and staying innovative and learning and continuing to push the envelope. You're doing all the right things, and all the advice I've just given is actually, you're a testament to that. And so keep up the good work. I appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you, BJ. It's been a pleasure getting to chat. Take care.
Take care, man.